episode 77 of Grace and Steel. I'm Kevin Steele.
And I'm Kevin Michael Grace.
The title of our show is Feels Bad, Man. And our cover image has the rocket's red glare of bombs that burst on an airstrip in Syria, which gave proof through that April 7th night that the neocons are still there. Anyways, what was Trump thinking? After presenting himself as the anti-empire, anti-regime change candidate in the presidential election, it looked like he was stepping into that role, pleasing his enemies and angering his supporters. During the presidential election, I was worried that Hillary Clinton wanted to start World War III. Now I'm starting to wonder if everybody's treating that as unavoidable, that everybody wants to start World War III, including Trump, for no good reason. But I cling to the hope that perhaps there's some kind of Machiavellian maneuver here, or power play that I'm not seeing in sending these 59 cruise missiles to make glass holes in the desert sand. My co-host, he's the one who feels bad. So, how bad do you feel, Kevin?
Pretty bad, Kevin.
Okay.
Pretty
how
bad.
bad
I mean,
how black
it's
pills?
not, well, okay, you want it on a scale of 1 to 10?
As we've used that before. Okay.
Well, I don't know. I feel like, this is the sort of question that John McLaughlin used to ask in the McLaughlin Report.
Mm-hmm.
With 1 being not at all bad and 10 being metaphysical, disaster.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm saying this is a 7 or an 8.
Wow, that bad. Okay. All right. Well, you better explain that because I'm not feeling that bad about it. What I'm seeing here is, there is some opportunism on his part, but I see an assertion of power. I don't say that it's necessarily good or bad. I see a lot of mixed reactions. A lot of people don't know how to take this, and that some people have suggested is a good thing. In that, he's using the old Nixonian. It's better if they think I'm crazy. But anyways, go ahead. It's your bad feelings we're concerned with. Tell us about your bad feelings.
Well, let's quote from Peter Hitchens' column Sunday. Now, we have definitely moved from being a post-war world to being a pre-war world. Madness and folly are loose again. Consider first that early on Friday morning, the United States Navy launched 59 cruise missiles on behalf of Al-Qaeda. If this is not bad enough for you, note that the President of the United States did not even bother to pretend that he was seeking United Nations cover for what he did. Note next that in the same week, our Prime Minister Theresa May made a duty visit to pay homage to the medieval despots of Saudi Arabia who kindly buy our warplanes and bombs and are currently using them to savage effect in Yemen. I should make a distinction right off the top between me as an ally of the alt-right and me as a non-American. Mm-hmm. As a non-American, this is deeply depressing because I had rather hoped that the United States was getting out of the we smash up a bunch of countries and don't press us too hard for the reasons.
Okay. Well, I might.
Now, this is not good. This is not good for the United States for all sorts of reasons, not least of which is the idea of blowback. Remember blowback?
Yeah, I seem to recall something of that happening, but there's also, I guess, immediate expediency as well. I think somebody else was remarking that while this was all going on, we had a Supreme Court nominee pushed through. And that's a good thing, because nobody really seemed to notice that they had to eliminate the filibuster, and zoop, all of a sudden, that guy's in. Okay. Anyways, as I remarked to you before, terrible if people had to die for that, I suppose, but...
Okay, well, I will continue to hold my bold, not to say controversial opinion that murder is bad.
Mm.
And that the deliberate killing of people with whom we have no quarrel is murder, full stop. You will recall that in 1998, Bill Clinton attacked a pharmaceutical factory in the Sudan. Claiming it was manufacturing chemical weapons. Or had been storing chemical weapons.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it turned out that what it was making was largely aspirin. And why did Bill Clinton do this? Well, because of Monica Lewinsky, That's why.
But he's still free.
We have this principle that whenever an American president gets into a spot of bothers, a bunch of wogs must be blown to kingdom come.
Yeah, that was a bad precedent. Agreed. But is that what happened here? Was he in a spot of bother? I mean, I simply stated what happened. I didn't say one caused the other.
Well, I would say that he's in all sorts of spots of bother. Now, the question is, how serious did he take any of this?
Mm.
Now, obviously, the media hates his guts and will lie about Trump and have been lying about Trump and will continue to lie about Trump. But let's see, what has Trump done since he has become president? Well, the first big project was the visa restrictions.
Mm-hmm.
And they were thrown out by the courts twice.
Okay.
We've had no pushback on this yet, and he may be waiting.
Mm.
For instance, for Gorsuch to be confirmed, Gorsuch has been confirmed. The other thing that Trump engaged in was lobbying on behalf of Paul Ryan's revisions to Obamacare, which would have not only made Obamacare much worse than it was, but would have taken a legislative disaster which was associated with first Obama and then the Democrats, and then transferring ownership of that clusterfuck to the Republican Party and Donald Trump.
Okay, so you're saying
now, if you
he's had a
believe,
bad record so far, is what you're saying?
Well, no, it's not all bad.
Totally
It's not all bad news.
Mm.
It's not all bad news. I'm just saying, the people who argue that Trump is playing 28D chess, or however many dimensions it is, that he set Paul Ryan up for a fall. And I think it's entirely likely that he set up Paul Ryan for a fall. But the fact is that political capital was wasted there. It may have been necessary to expend such political capital, but political capital was wasted. Now, what Trump is supposedly next going to do is tax cuts. Now, this idea of tax cuts, endless tax cuts, this is the Republican playbook. Mm-hmm. We will cut your taxes.
Right.
And this has been proved to be unavailing for the Republican Party. Again and again.
Keeps them busy.
Well, yeah, it does keep them busy.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is that tax cuts are of little relevance to people who don't have jobs.
Okay. But just to go, can I interrupt?
Just to let me finish here.
Okay.
Immigration.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Trump should be working on.
Okay. Yes, he did do that. He ran into obstacles. So you're saying he should be building the wall? Okay, they've got tenders out for it now. There's a bit of blowback on the landowners down there. But I just want to go back to this chess analogy, this idea that he's playing 22D chess or something like that. Well, it seems to me that, he's playing chess all right, but he's playing 22 games of chess rather than 22D chess. He's playing a lot of different boards in a lot of different places. And, considering how many enemies this guy had when he took over, he's got a long way to go. He just couldn't clear the board. We noted the problems when we talked about the lack of the elite that he had to choose from. He had to go with what was there. And so he's got to appease some of these factions that you don't like some of the time.
He doesn't have to appease any factions. He owes the neoconservatives absolutely nothing because they tried to destroy him. He owes movement conservatism absolutely nothing because they tried to destroy him. And I will add further that movement conservatism has a small political base, which is insufficient to elect a president of the United States, as we have seen. And neoconservatism has no political base whatsoever and never has.
Yeah, well, wrong. You're wrong there. In fact, these people are in the Congress and they're in the Senate. And that's what he has to deal with. He has to deal with these people, the political base. He's not elected the king of the world, he can't just do whatever he wants.
He's not elected the king of the world. He's elected president of the United States.
Yeah, president of the United States is not the ruler or the king of the United States.
No, he's not the king. No, but my point is that people don't get elected nationally by threatening to blow up the world. Hey, you know what? We haven't been blowing up the world enough, so we have to blow up the world some more. That was pretty much played out by 2004 when Bush barely won re-election against John Kerry, of all people.
But then it worked for Obama. He was blowing up the world.
He was blowing up the world. He wasn't talking about it, though.
Oh, okay.
And he wasn't campaigning on it.
All right. Yes, well, Trump didn't campaign on it.
Now, I should mention, to be fair, with regard to immigration, there is a piece by Ed Rubenstein on VDare, April the 8th, which is quite relevant in this regard. Virtually all MSM economics writers focused on the disappointing 98,000 job gain reported by the March Employment Survey. Rarely has big media missed the big story as thoroughly. Immigrant displacement of American workers increasingly appears to have reversed since the end of the Obama administration, and illegal immigration appears to have collapsed. So that is good news. But
can we
I
accuse
would
him of doing
suggest
nothing then, or?
No, I would suggest, however, that they're not going to stop. The illegals and their friends in the media and the deep state are not going to stop.
Mm-hmm.
And there has to be a pushback. And I would further say, look, it's obvious that the United States doesn't need any immigrants. Canada doesn't need any immigrants. Britain doesn't need any immigrants. This whole, the planted axiom that, of course, all of these countries are going to take in huge amounts of people every year. A stake has to be put through the heart of it, because this immigration has two purposes. The first purpose is to drive down wages and to put natives out of jobs. And the second purpose is to create new voters for left-wing parties.
Right. Duly noted. And I don't think Trump has changed his position at all. Everybody fears he has because he's changed his position temporarily with these bombs flying into Syria. Which was, yes, I agree, pretty bad, considering what he had said in the years prior, going back, I don't know, a dozen years.
Well, no, we didn't say that, did we? We didn't mention that Trump went on Twitter for many years arguing stridently against American intervention in Syria, and during the campaign, he went toe-to-toe with Hillary Clinton on that and made clear, at perhaps some cost, that no, the United States was not going to get involved in Syria, and this was one of the reasons that led to him being an agent of Russia.
Mm-hmm.
And, I fear that this is the reason, or one of the reasons, why he got involved foolishly in Syria. What better way to prove his bona fides, his anti-Russian bona fides, than to attack Russia's ally in the Middle East?
Okay, well, I was going to ask you, put on your tinfoil hat and tell me why the change of heart. I mean, I
don't know.
No theories? I mean, you're worried about it.
No theories?
Yes.
I don't know. I mean, okay, here's a theory. The theory is that Make America Great Again is down to two things. Jawboning American employers not to move work out of the country, or if they have to, move it back. Jawboning, and that jawboning has already taken place. We know that illegal immigrants in the United States are freaked out, and they are self-deporting or at fear of being deported. And the other, I guess, would be jawboning that America is not going to be pushed around. Now, this is where it gets, black-pilled again, because all these people were saying that, who's that thought girl? Tammy Lauren, is that her name? that Syria had rattled America's cage. Well, even assuming that Syria was responsible for this chemical gas attack on civilians, how is that rattling America's cage? There's no evidence that I've seen that Syria is responsible for this, and all the internal evidence, who benefits, points against Assad being responsible for this.
Yeah,
but
I understand, and I actually don't think he is myself. But I mean, what you say? What does it do? Well, if we take into account the red line that Obama drew with chemical weapons, he was tested with that red line, and he did nothing. So you throw. This is just a theory. You throw more chemical weapons out there with the new president, and you see what he does. Is he all bluster? Or is he going to come at us? Is he going to throw a punch?
So it's Trump's job to rescue a failed Obama policy. Is that what you're arguing?
No, I'm just looking at it from a possible Syrian point of view. Okay, so what do we do to antagonize him, you asked? Well, I mean, this is, like I say, this is pretty obvious. The antagonism is identical to what Obama faced with his red line on chemical weapons. So it's the shit test. That's the theory. That's my theory. It's not one I'm going to stick to, but
okay. I just, another aspect of this which is depressing is how very quickly this became meta. Let's not talk about what Trump did and whether there were good reasons for what Trump did. Let's talk about how this is perceived. We're back into 28 dimension chess here. And I have to say that on NPC, they seem to be arguing the notion that this is great because now we're done with Richard Spencer and the like. You see, on the one, that they've fallen into the trap that they have accused the Black Pillars of. That the Black Pillars have said, well, the neocons are just pleased as punch about this whole business, but we can't make decisions based on what our enemies think. Oh, then why are you carrying on about how Richard Spencer and all these people are getting hysterical and being faggots, which is a word that they've used over and over again? You see, I think it's time for us to fess up, both of us, that we have been responsible in our own small way for helping in the creation of this cult of personality around Trump, a Stalinist cult of personality. That everything that he does is good. So anything bad that happens, by definition, is not his responsibility.
Am I supposed to confess to this?
Well, yes, you are.
Well, you're not going to get me to do it. Because that was mostly you.
Always talk about the God Emperor and all that. Yeah, maybe more than you. Maybe me more than you. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Well, yeah, there was a lot of hope with him.
You were going to go, you were going to get all Machiavellian on me and give me Machiavellian explanations for why Trump did this. So, go ahead.
I mean, basically, it was decisive. It was decisive and quick. I mean, there's no great mystery to it. You have a short amount of time to prove to people that you are decisive. And if you decide not to do something, that people will not take notice of that. But if you decide to do something and it blows up, then people will be afraid of you because they know you're not afraid to act. That's the Machiavellian simple explanation of this. As far as what it does as well is it flushes out the people that are, not behind you 100%. I mean,
okay. So you are very much in favor of this cult of personality, then?
No. I'm just telling you, this is the kind of Machiavellian thinking that people can use here, right?
Previously you were talking about how we needed to create alliances, build alliances with the neocons and movement conservatives. But you're saying that the people who backed him the strongest and spent the most effort on his behalf, those people deserve to get screwed. Because this is textbook movement conservatism. Stab your friends in the back and then say, hey, what are you going to do about it, punk?
Right.
Are you going to vote for the other side? Ha, ha, ha. You're stuck with me.
Yeah, well, then he's a one-term president, right? That's what he'll end up being.
I don't know that that's true, and I don't know whether that's particularly relevant. I mean, for the reason that, as we have seen, and as I predicted to you, the initial result of any American military action anywhere is that the president's popularity soars.
Right. And we're like, what, third month into the presidency and a long way from re-election day. So this wouldn't be the time to necessarily have your popularity soar if your goal was re-election. So I'm just saying, if he's gonna piss all over the people that brung him, then he's gonna pay the price for it, right? Eventually, you've just testified that there's no constituency.
He may or may not.
Well, there's no constituency.
He may or may not.
You've just said there isn't any.
I mean, no. I mean, if you listen to Nikki Haley, say, the UN ambassador, the United States ambassador to the United Nations, the woman with the porn star name, that she seems to believe that the United States is going to be moving to remove Assad. Mm-hmm. Now, if this was just, okay, this is the best case scenario that I can advance for this. That this is a Trumpian equivalent of what the British Empire did throughout the 19th century and into the early parts of the 20th century, where they'd be dealing with some fractious colony and they'd send a gunboat into the port, lob a few shells into the city, and move on. They've made their point. That's the best case scenario as far as I see it. Now, you have all these people on the right talking about, oh, well, Assad has to go, and we'll find someone else. Oh, really? We'll find someone else. Will we? It's going to be that simple? I don't think it would be that simple because, of course, the Alawites are a religious minority that are hated by the Sunnis. And the reason why Syria is, by Muslim standards, a relatively uncrazy place is because it is secular. However, the United States put paid to that in Iraq. They removed the secular dictatorship. And this resulted in wide-scale ethnic cleansing, mass murder, a huge scale. If the Alawites, the Assad family is removed, and particularly if they're put to death, as Gaddafi was, then one can expect a mass killing of the Alawites and the Christians. They'll be put to the sword.
Okay.
Now, the question is, why do we care? Well, that's a very good question. But if we didn't care, why did we get involved in the first place? You see, the people on NPC are arguing, well, the United States is already involved. The United States is involved in dozens of countries. What, 80? They have troops in 80 countries? This doesn't have to be the case in perpetuity. And I think that this is the big lesson from this, is that some of us thought the United States under Trump was going to pull back from empire, but empire it is. Empire wins.
Okay. That's from this one incident. You take that. It's full steam ahead for the empire.
Well, no,
Globalism all the way.
If Trump isn't going to do it, who is? As I said, he owes these people, the neocons and the movement cons, nothing.
Okay. So what would you like to say?
Apparently he was moved to action
call back all the ships? Is that what you're saying?
What's that?
Call back all the ships, bring them back home. Everybody.
Well, I don't know. I mean,
within the first 100 days.
All these troops in Europe, troops in Germany, troops in South Korea, troops in Italy, troops all over the place. And, they're tripwires, among other things.
Mm-hmm.
But let's talk about this.
Are we no longer worried about the military-industrial complex? Does that exist? The military-industrial complex, the one that
Eisenhower. Yeah, of course it exists.
All right, so it exists. It's pretty powerful. So if Trump did as you say, he would be angering a lot of people with lots of money and interest in death.
He's already done that.
Okay.
By running and getting elected and, not, having a Damascene conversion before taking office.
Mm-hmm.
But let's talk about this question of friendship with the United States. That Bashar Assad's father, had a lot of difficulties with the United States. And if you watch Adam Curtis's latest documentary, Curtis argues that it was in fact Syria and not Libya that was responsible for these terrorist atrocities of the 1980s, because Assad's father believed that Henry Kissinger had double-crossed him. Now, Bashar Assad, after 9/11, the whole Middle East is in turmoil, and so he needs to find some security with the United States. So I don't know whether he went to the United States, or more likely the United States went to him and said, there's a bunch of people we want to torture for various reasons, but we can't do it on our own territory because of pesky international law. So how about if we do it on Syrian territory? And Assad said, yeah, that's fine. You go ahead and do that. Now, perhaps you can tell us about one of the most famous cases that you wrote about in that regard.
Are you talking about the Maher Arar
That's
case?
right.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that was a Canadian.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, it, in my opinion, was an exaggeration. So I'm not going to make your case for you here in terms of torture.
This fellow was said to be a terrorist.
Is suspected of having ties to the Muslim Brotherhood, right? So yeah, he got stopped in America where he was working, and then
he's a Canadian citizen. He was a Canadian citizen, right?
That's right. Yeah,
and he was kidnapped and sent to Syria, correct?
That's right. Kidnapped is not quite the word that they were using at the time, but yes, he was sent over to Syria, imprisoned, and he claims he was tortured, and he was given $10 million compensation from the Canadian government because our government gave the information to the Americans that he was suspected of having Muslim Brotherhood ties. There was little evidence of physical evidence of torture, which threw a lot of doubt on my mind anyway when I wrote the story on the claims. But nevertheless, cited as one of the big public cases where Syria was accused of torture. In that case, the torture was the smashing of his hands with inch-thick electrical cables. That was his claim. Among other things, like being treated bad, not given food, kept awake, that kind of stuff, mostly.
I mention this only to demonstrate that Assad bent over backwards to be friendly with the United States after 9/11.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. That's always
Assad has been, shall we say, rigorous in going after terrorists, Islamists, Islamofascists, whatever we're calling them these days. Apparently too rigorous for liberals and other humanitarians, such that, after pounding the shit out of Iraq for 25 years, there arose a kind of a Stone Age version of Islam there, called ISIS. And so the United States and Canada and Britain and all these countries decide that, we have to find, quote, moderate, unquote, allies in Syria. And guess who we found? Al-Qaeda.
Mm-hmm.
They're the good guys.
They toned it down quite a bit. So, okay. Again, we're getting back to this thing that we discussed, way back when. Let's try to figure out what's going on in Syria. I don't know how we ended up there, why we ended up there, or I should say, the Americans. Why did they end up there? But
I don't know. There was this. One of the reasons was there was this fellow in Edinburgh who was claiming to be a Lebanese Syrian woman, and wrote this heartrending blog about her experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that?
No, I don't, actually. I was like, huh? Is this fraudulent stuff? Propaganda?
Yeah.
Okay.
And, the world was simply, the heart of the world was touched by this. And then this Syrian lesbian was kidnapped, disappeared or whatever, and then the whole thing fell to pieces. There was a documentary made about it, Canadian documentary a couple of years ago, but we don't want to talk about that. That's not really productive. Let's talk about the 7-year-old girl on Twitter.
Yeah,
who seems to know an awful lot about geopolitics and has a verified account and writes in perfect English, free from grammatical and spelling errors.
They put a statue of her on Wall Street.
She's... That is to say, her grammar, at least insofar as Twitter is concerned, is better than Trump's. And this is a 7-year-old girl living in Turkey. Quite remarkable, wouldn't you say?
Well, I'll buy it. Sure, yeah, that's a reason to go to war. No, I mean, when you go back in the whole thing, Trump's bombing does look ridiculous because the whole thing looks ridiculous here. Why on earth are we there? I mean, I know that's your point. But, okay, so what you're saying, everybody pull back at once. I don't know. I mean, is that possible? Can they do that? Considering all the domestic politics, the mess that he's in there with all these neocons, you say they don't have a constituency, but they keep getting elected. John McCain got elected. I mean, he's there. He has to be dealt with somehow.
Well, death will take care of him.
Well, yeah.
Sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean... It seemed fairly obvious to me that if Trump had endorsed his primary opponent last year, we wouldn't have to worry about John McCain. But Trump decided to be the nice guy, and to be the loyal Republican. And John McCain has gone to foreign countries to criticize Trump's foreign policy. That's pretty close to treason. And that is how McCain... treason, isn't it? that is McCain paying back Trump for Trump not taking him out last year. These people are snakes.
Yeah,
and apparently we knew what Trump thought about snakes.
Yeah, right. But now he's in it, and he's up to it up to his eyeballs in it. It's not like he can stand outside and quarterback like we're doing right now. All I can say is this was such a reversal that there has to be circumstances here that I am not seeing or I don't understand.
Yeah, that is a category error, my friend.
How so?
Well, no, this idea that these people know what they're doing, okay, or that there's a very good reason for that. First off...
Well, actually, I was going to start this whole show with by saying, well, Kevin... What you don't understand is...
Yes.
Blah, blah, blah.
No. I mean, I was joking about this when I was interviewing Michael Doherty. See, that's one of the advantages, or temptations, if you will, of being president of the United States. That you wake up and you're feeling crummy. I don't know, maybe your stomach hurts or your feet hurts, and Congress is mad at you, and all your enemies are saying that you're losing it. And what can I do? How can I make a difference today? Well, I can send off 59 cruise missiles and blow a bunch of wogs to Kingdom Come. That'll show them.
And it did.
I'm not saying that that's what happened. I'm just saying that this idea that, maybe it is the Nixon bonkers factor. There's all sorts of reasons, but I wanted to get into the subject of the alt-right here. Because apart from the people on NPC, and Ricky Vaughn is part of the, he came out of NPC. He is absolutely furious about this. I didn't listen to the first NPC pause cast. Is Ricky still frothing at the mouth about this?
He's more worried about the long term, about who's surrounding Trump right now. That's what his concern is. He wonders if there's people moving in. The worm tongues are moving in on him. So. That's what he's looking at here. He's
I'll just say that
positions.
I have been following this, and Greg Johnson and Hunter Wallace and Richard Spencer and a whole bunch of people whose names you've never heard of, or names that I've never heard of. I just see them on Twitter. They are spitting mad. Now, these are just a bunch of losers on the internet, right? Well, that's what we said about them last year. That was before Trump won. Now, supposedly, the theory goes that Trump's unexpected, shocking, world-changing victory was to a large extent due to this Twitter support, which came from people who, as a rule, were estranged from politics. They were estranged from politics, or they were never interested in politics because nothing will ever change. We have controlled opposition. Oh yeah, we're against those guys because we're in favor of all those things that everyone likes. And nothing changes. The path, we continue down the same destructive path. We're still a Gadarene swine about to jump off the cliff, and then Trump shows up, and he has a different way. That he is against bad experience. You remember him saying that?
Yeah, I do. I remember him saying that. I also remember a lot of people saying, well, if he just deals with the immigration thing, then that's fine. Or if he just changes the conversation, then that's fine. Okay, well, he changed the conversation, and he's
yeah, that's not how it works, because nothing exists in a stasis.
Sure,
because he's going to be president for at least 4 years, and more likely 8 years, and current trends will continue unless they are stopped or reversed. Now, this idea that, well, let me just quote to what Greg Johnson has to say in his essay on countercurrents, a couple of days ago. Never betray your friends to court the favor of your enemies. If you betray your friends, the most principled and perceptive among them will drop you, leaving only the delusional and venal. That is not a good trade, given that the approval you gain is bound to be fleeting and contingent, whereas the contempt and distrust you create will be permanent. The people you betrayed may come back to you out of sentimentality or self-interest, but their trust and respect will never return. They will always regard you as a traitor. Why is such a simple lesson so hard for politicians to understand? Now, I will say that a lot of people on the right, alt-right, were mystified about Trump going to bat for Ryan Care, as they called it. But it seemed that Ryan Care was in trouble right from the very beginning. This guy, Paul Ryan, he is just a waste of space. He had 7 years to come up with a plan to replace Obamacare, which was job one. And he came up with a terrible plan that was worse than the original plan. So, as I suggested earlier, the people on the alt-right, we're not all upset about that, because they thought, well, okay, let's give Paul Ryan enough rope to hang himself with. This Syria thing is different. It is terribly different, apart from the moral considerations. And I don't know, maybe that makes me a faggot caring about, killing people with whom we have no quarrel. But, oh yes, we're going to get into Syria, and we're going to buy an obvious hoax of a chemical attack, and we're going to move immediately on this without establishing proof. And we're just going to leave the door open now, because, the civil war in Syria was almost over, and 2 or 3 days before the attack, the United States government had said that regime change is off the table now in Syria. Is it back on the table? Nobody knows.
Sure.
And one result is that the opposition, ISIS and Al-Qaeda in Syria, which seemed like the jig was up for them, they are now thoroughly invigorated.
Okay, but you've already explained, you've given Trump reason why he did this. You said that he's going to get reelected, possibly 8 years. Okay, if we follow our own advice, Machiavellian advice, that's his goal. And if this had furthered his goal, then he achieved it.
Well, no.
You can hit the
if you want to get back to Burnham, that he explained the Machiavelli was a defender of freedom. The Machiavelli wanted an independent Italy. And the whole idea of attaining power so that you can sit on a throne and make people genuflect to you, well, this is what we have got, and what we continue to get. And what good does it do us? What good does it do our civilization? What good does it do our people?
Yes, but a total withdrawal, instant withdrawal from world police, Is that an attainable goal? I mean, that's what a Machiavellian.
I'm not talking about a complete withdrawal. I'm not talking about an instant withdrawal. I'm saying the United States was effectively out of Syria, and Trump has put America back in, which is
they couldn't have been that out of it if they were hanging around close enough to toss missiles in a couple of days.
There are American ships everywhere in the world, and these cruise missiles are long range.
Uh-huh.
My point, the hunger, these people, to smash up Syria once and for all, to remove Assad. These people, after the siege of Aleppo was lifted, after Aleppo was freed, these people were furious because their evil goals in Syria had been frustrated. Now they're back on the table. Now they're back on the table. And this is inexplicable.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll know this week how permanent it is. You seem to think that the neocons have taken over forever and for good.
No, I'm not saying that they have taken over forever for good. Their hold was broken, and now a lifeline has been thrown to them, just as it's been thrown to the movement conservatives. And what you do not want to do is you do not want to give succor to your enemies, and they are most assuredly Trump's enemies. They will always hate him, and they will always be seeking to destroy him because he stood out against them, and worse than that, triumphed.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying this is a total capitulation then? I mean, I'm really kind of confused at what you're saying.
I'm not saying it's a total
lifeline, so they're going to come back?
He is introducing ambiguity where there should be no ambiguity. This isn't like working with Congress. Trump doesn't control Congress. However, he does control the presidency. Now, I could point out that what Trump did in Syria was thoroughly unconstitutional, but I'm just going to drop this discussion of the Constitution by saying, hey, constitutionalists, you got this. And you had Vault 7 before that. And why aren't you jumping up and down, tearing your hair out? Because the Constitution is a dead letter, and you know it, don't you?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's dismiss them from the conversation. Okay. This lifeline that's been thrown to them, what can they do? How will we be able to tell whether they're going to revive the neocons and the...
What do they get? There are going to be more false flag attacks in Syria.
Mm-hmm.
Of course there are.
Okay. In other words, it's like the matador baiting the bull with the cape. Is it? That's what they're going to do. They're trying to get him. What we know
about all groups coming out of the Muslim Brotherhood or influenced by the Muslim Brotherhood is they believe that Islam has failed. That Islam has become soft and corrupt. And so they have been on board with and taken part in monstrous atrocities against their own people for decades. Check out what happened in Algeria as an example.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I'm trying to untangle, I guess, the lifeline and see it for what it is. You seem to think that this is enough of a lifeline to have them reassert themselves completely. In other words, dominance. Trump is done.
No, I'm not. I'm not saying that. I said they were on death's door.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and he has reinvigorated them. He has given them hope, and hope is the most important thing in politics, in life, actually.
Okay. So, but there's no constituency for them. You said that they don't have a constituency.
They're vampire. Well, the neocons are vampires. But if people are willing to keep exposing their necks to the neocons, well, what happens then?
Okay, so you don't see any 4D chess here at all, or 22D chess.
You know the rule about not inviting vampires into your home?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, well, neocons are vampires. Stop inviting them into the home.
So you think that's what he's done? McCain is now in. And who are these vampires? You're talking about Jared Kushner or whatever his name is, the Ivanka's husband? Is he the vampire?
I don't know. Apparently he got a loan of $250 million from George Soros.
Mm-hmm.
That's not good.
No, that's not good. I agreed. Okay. So what? He should be tossed
Look, let's talk about Steve Bannon. Okay.
Well, he's not a
Well,
vampire.
I don't know that. I don't know that it's possible to replace Jared Kushner. I mean, this Fire Kushner hashtag has been all over the internet.
Mm-hmm.
He's married to the boss's daughter, and the boss's daughter is the closest advisor that Trump has.
Mm-hmm.
She's very close to Goldman Sachs.
Okay.
I mean, we know this.
Right. We knew this before.
I'm reading a story from something called Axios. April the 8th, yesterday. Trump plans centrist push and Priebus is on board. Steve Bannon, the engine and soul of President Trump's hard-edged approach to his first months in office, is increasingly isolated and will be forced out unless he can adopt a more cooperative approach, a top source told me. On both style and substance, Bannon got crosswise with Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump, who are pushing for a more competence and results-driven focus for the West Wing. In their view, Bannon is too inclined to want to burn things down and blow things up. Yeah, blow things up. That's terrible writing because Bannon was very strongly against the Syria attack. Never mind that. No one knows how to write anymore, especially in politics. They want, the good guys, the moderates, they want a more open process, driven by the interests of the president, not ideology. Now, it could be that this story is made up, and on NPC they're arguing that all these stories are made up. However, what happens in politics when you have a whole host of these stories? You must have seen these stories about Bannon, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Come on.
When you have story after story after story claiming senior officials, blah, blah, blah. Where are these stories coming from?
They're all rewrites of the original story. I don't know. That's what I see.
Where these stories are coming from is that people from within the Trump administration are leaking against Bannon. And the way that this always works in politics, unless there is a very serious pushback, that is to say that Steve Bannon is out front with something, that Steve Bannon is photographed with his arm around Trump, or vice versa. If it's not made clear that Bannon is in the loop and is top dog there, it's just a matter of time before he gets the push.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
The defenses of Bannon that we have seen so far have been exactly the kind of pro forma defenses that the owner makes on behalf of the general manager, and the general manager makes on behalf of the coach roughly about a week before they're fired.
Okay. So everything's changed now. You've totally black-pilled everybody.
I'm not totally
yeah.
black-pilled. I'm just saying that this is a self-inflicted wound. This is a terrible self-inflicted wound.
Okay. And it's irreversible, the death spiral that this wound has caused?
I'm not saying it's a death spiral.
What would he have to do to reverse it?
I wouldn't go as far.
Tell me what he would do to reverse this.
I don't know.
You've got the ear of the president.
He could make it clear that regime change is not on the cards in Syria. Not going to happen.
Okay. All right. That's what you want to hear.
That's what I want to hear, but that may not be, you see, if you're looking at the Nixonian option, the bonkers effect, that you leave everyone in doubt as to your intentions.
Okay. That's not what you want. You want a clear signal. That this was
I want a clear signal that the good guys get what they want and the enemies are smited, and smited again.
Okay. I guess you just have to identify the good guys. Then you've done that.
Burn down, as someone said on Twitter, find the neocon tree, burn it down, and dig up the roots.
That, is that possible? How deep is it? I mean, it's been there. It's been planted pretty deep over the last 17, 20 years, right?
Yeah, okay. So. Well, it's early in the day and it is Lent. After a couple of drinks, I'd start to think that, what is it that the neocons have on everybody? And I don't really like to start thinking in that way because, sometimes I come to some pretty horrifying conclusions.
Right, yeah. Okay. Think they're blackmailing their way into war?
Oh. Yeah, that's what I think.
Oh, okay.
That's what I think. I think that, I probably expressed this before. I'll express it again, that the neocons are a mystery religion. What is the nature of that mystery? That they are a death cult. And I have come to seriously believe that the neocons worship death and destruction. I don't mean that figuratively, I mean that literally.
Okay.
And I sometimes think that what the neocons are aiming to do, what they want is the destruction of all life on Earth.
Okay. That would be tough to argue for. Also, bringing it about would be, the end of them as well, right?
How about World War... Yeah, okay, well, their dark god will reward them.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
World War III. World War III with Russia.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is...
you remember during the debate? Do you remember when we were talking about a no-fly zone? And, what if Russia crosses that no-fly zone? Is the United States going to shoot down Russian airplanes? Remember when that came up?
I remember that, yeah. So I don't know whether anything Russian got destroyed in this. I mean, this wasn't you darts cross this line. Otherwise,
it was largely, apart from the people who died, it was largely a token attack. You blow up an airstrip, and the airstrip is repaired very quickly.
Mm-hmm. I think there were even some tweets on that by Trump. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So, but as I say, it is the ambiguity, the stupidity of the attack, the ambiguity of the message that is sent, attacking your friends and rewarding your enemies. And, well, I should have mentioned this before. Trump has been bombing Iraq. And there was this little incident in Mosul recently where 200 civilians were killed. Trump engaged in this Navy SEAL attack on Yemen, which I gather was a failure.
Right, that lost.
And then, see, I was pushing that out of my mind.
Mm-hmm.
I say I knew this. Trump is the 5th American president to bomb Iraq. Why is he bombing Iraq? Why is he doing Saudi Arabia's dirty work in Yemen?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I don't know. Maybe he just likes war. Like all modern American presidents have really liked war. I mean, maybe that's the reason why. I mean,
maybe they're powerless to stop it.
The State of the Union address, when they brought out the widow, and she'd only been a widow for a few days, and let's give this lovely lady a standing O here. That, objectively, that was sickening. It really is sickening to drag out a fresh widow, for political gain. But all the politicians do it now. This principle, this goes back to Reagan. Reagan invented this nonsense.
Okay, fair enough. But you're saying that now everything has come flooding in. The things you've been pushing back are now undeniable. He is a warmonger.
Well, look, it is... Okay, maybe he does great things on the domestic side. That's still possible. And maybe he thinks twice about this foreign adventurism. Maybe he does. I don't know. But I had kind of hoped that this idea of America antagonizing the rest of the world to no end. I think I'm going to wrap this up by saying that it's difficult to understand when you are the top dog how other people feel about you. But the idea of pushing a button hundreds of miles away and people being blown up, and there is no way that you can fight back against this, enrages people. And it enrages people all over the world. Well, and I don't think there's any need for it.
I think Trump understood this. Everything he said all his life made it apparent that he understood this. I think that the only reason I could see for the change here is that maybe it's a lot more difficult to stop this juggernaut than we thought. That maybe presidents get suckered into it, and they are almost powerless to stop it. I don't know. I mean, what argues for it?
You're accusing me of being black-pilled, and your
you're
summation.
Black-pilled on Trump. I'm black-pilled on the
Your
world.
summation is the counsel of despair.
Yeah, wow. That's true.
There's nothing we can do about it.
No.
Just lay back and enjoy the bloodshed.
No. Okay, now you never let me finish there. No, maybe it's more difficult to stop than we thought, and it's going to take a little longer than a few months to weed out your enemies. especially when you have so many of them, in your own party, in the press, in the other party, the opposing parties. And, no matter what you do, of course, you're going to piss off your followers at this point anyway, because you're not going to get anything done because you have all these enemies. So, you can't please anybody, please the one you're with. I'm not sure if that's what's happening here. Maybe this was a token effort, and we're going to see some change. We're going to find out, who the bad guys are now, and the people that are calling for more, and maybe they'll be ousted. That's the hope, okay? What else can we do? I mean, we could sit here and rail on our podcast about, the war and the droning of the Middle East, but I guess we have to have some hope here. I mean, we can't be totally black-pilled. That's what I'm thinking.
I'm not totally black-pilled.
Okay.
I'm not totally black-pilled. I'm just saying that this...
Let's ask our audience.
This was shocking to me.
Mm-hmm.
This was shocking and inexplicable, and perhaps it will remain shocking and inexplicable.
Mm-hmm.
That's all we can pray for, and I use the word pray advisedly.
That it doesn't become routine. Yes, understood. Or that we will at least get some clarification on this whole incident itself, in order to expose...
Oh, you mean verdict, punishment first, and trial later? Yeah.
Yeah, well, that happens, when you want to be decisive, right? That's the thing. Okay, now we're going to determine whether this was a false flag. I don't know. Well, that's a tough call,
No, but see, Trump could never admit that.
Mm-hmm, I know.
Trump could never admit that. Oh yeah, you know, I blew the hell out of that thing up in Syria, and I was suckered.
Right. No, he can't admit it, but it does stop him from doing it in the future, right? I was suckered
by a bunch of crisis actors wearing white helmets, flip-flops, and no gloves, supposedly tending to sarin victims.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
I am so easily swayed by mocked up pictures that the fact that people are wandering around with no gloves and flip-flops in such a situation, I just didn't notice that bit.
Right.
So no, he's not going to admit it.
I never said he had to admit it.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
You were the one that came up with that. No, I said that he has to figure it out. That he has to realize that he's been suckered, and then make sure that he can stop it when he sees it again. Because from what you've indicated, this is going to encourage them. There's going to be more of these attacks, whether they are false flags or attacks, in order to provoke him or draw him farther in. Well, okay, if they're going to make that attempt, what can we do to prevent it? Well, we're already doing it. We're talking about the suspicious aspects of it and making sure people understand that.
Yeah,
and meanwhile, all we can do.
Meanwhile, we've had these terrorist attacks in Sweden and in Russia on Palm Sunday. Egypt.
Yeah.
And guess what? It's like no one cares about these anymore.
Yeah, that's a bit odd.
It's not really a big deal. That's just, terrorism works. Terrorism works. If you want to change people's minds, kill them.
Yeah, well,
that's the way it works.
We need more 7-year-olds in Turkey.
I wanted to wrap this up by saying that there is a big debate on the right about this question of unity. And I'm going to put on my old man hat here and say screw unity. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Because that is what the conservative movement, the right, has demanded for us for our entire lifetimes. And what do we get in exchange for marching in lockstep with the venerable leader is no influence. No influence.
Mm-hmm.
The only influence any group has is when they're afraid of you. That's when you have influence. If they know that you are safely tucked away in a pocket, they know they can do whatever they like to you. So my advice to the right is stay strong, speak out on issues of principle, and speak out when our interests are being ignored and our enemies are being rewarded.
And that's what this podcast does. If you've been following all the time, actually. We've been on that. So I guess this is not that unusual that, we would find issue with this, though I think that you found more issue with it than I did. I tend to think that there's something here that I'm not seeing because it's such an anomaly.
Well, you see, Kevin, what you don't understand
maybe that's true this time. Nobody's actually saying that to me. If they were actually attempting to explain it to me, maybe then I would be suspicious. But they're not. It's just this weird event happened, and everybody is interpreting it in 100 different ways and blaming 100 different people. So, but I guess we don't have time to identify them. For the end of this show is upon us. And so I think we're going to call an end to episode 77 of Race and Steel. I'm Kevin Steele.
And I'm Kevin Michael Grace.